Welcome back, everybody. My name is All Fun and Games. I stream every day on Twitch TV, and I also make fun little videos here on YouTube. Today, we're going to be talking about walls, and specifically walls that should not be inside of your base. Now, some of you might be coming here and going, hey, I love walls. I'm going to put them wherever I want. Well, that's completely up to you. But I'm going to tell you why walls are probably not the best to have inside of your base, and why you should probably avoid doing so. So, here it goes. If for some odd reason I decided that I wanted a wall off my base and I managed to have a few hounds around us, of course I'm using creative mode while I'm spawning this stuff in, but if I did have some hounds that, for example, wanted to run around over this area and I wanted to get away from said hounds, well, for one, I could obviously run right through and make a little doorway here with just a regular door. So let's just imagine that that is the case. But a hound were to get stuck on this wall here and essentially could catch on fire and or break down the wall. What will most likely happen first is the hound would break down the wall and then eventually come and attack me, or in worst case scenario, could even, if it was a fire hound inside of summertime, could actually catch on fire. For example, if somebody were to hit it or kill it or whatever and get stuck on the wall and then set the base on fire. Essentially speaking, walls are not the worst to have in your base. As I'm just describing things rather than actually showcasing them, it's probably easier to see what I'm referring to. Sometimes it's actually kind of cool to have it go off, where, for example, if I'm attacking a bunch of tree guards and a bunch of tree guards start chasing me down, I can pull them all down into one little area that'll be easier for hitting them. But essentially speaking, what most likely will happen is walls within the base is sometimes not the best. As I mentioned before, hounds are one of your biggest problems. What happens inside of Don't Starve Together is when hounds start to actually attack you like they do in day 6 and so on, is hounds will spawn off of the screen. So, if for some odd reason I was actually standing here and hounds started to actually spawn in my base because that's where they're spawning from, or going towards, what's going to happen is they're going to get stuck on my wall, me coming back home and finding a bunch of hounds inside my base. So that is what I'm referring to about hounds actually getting stuck. It's not the case of actually hounds about to attack me and me run into my base instead of away. It's the fact that sometimes mobs can actually spawn outside the screen, and that is not something that you want. The reason why sometimes walls can actually be somewhat helpful is if you want to decorate it. So, for example, if I want to have a few walls here and there, make a little decorative piece, then walls could start to look a little bit nicer. But eventually speaking, what most likely will happen is we're going to end up with a problem if if hounds do spawn in. And I'm going to show you what could actually happen in this case. Let's spawn a few hounds. Let's spawn 3 of them. So, the hounds are now spawned in. They're now my base. Well, normally what would happen is when the hounds start to actually make noise or start to bay inside of the distance, they will spawn off screen like I mentioned, and then if they get stuck in your base, well, now you're running back to a bunch of hounds. Not to mention what I said about tree guards could be a good thing or a bad thing, as hounds, tend to follow you every which way. Tree guards are obviously walk a little bit slower, which gives you enough time to attack them. In this situation, hounds are obviously running around the actual walls, but if I'm going to run away from the hounds, I'm going to find myself stuck and having to go down a small little area, which makes the path easier for the hounds to actually catch up to me. So as you can see, sometimes it could be good, and sometimes it could be a nightmare. Now, not every case is the exact same situation. Meaning, if I were to make this wall a specific way, for example, like I said before, I could actually have the hounds pass through my base without a problem. Now, if that ends up being a thing that you want to do in your base, feel free, but I for one do not like my walls getting destroyed, and every single time an actual hound were to come into my base, I usually like to bring them outside and encourage everyone to leave my base. So, if you are playing with multiple people in your world, you're going to have to make sure that everybody's on the same page here, because if everyone decides that they want to go over to your new hound trap area where you have all your battle stations, however, one person decides that they're going to be AFK or sitting in your base, and then now hounds start to spawn in, or worse, an actual boss, well, now you have to worry about everything else getting destroyed, including walls. And walls are not the easiest things to actually replace, but they also are. They only require rocks to make, but sometimes they do require a lot of rocks to do so. I, for one, don't put walls around my base unless it's a mega base anymore, and for that matter, I know that I'm the only one in the server, or maybe 1 or 2 other people, that know that when hounds start to attack, I am now way outside of my base, so I don't have to worry about something like this happening. But like I said, to each their own, and if you want to have a base with walls in it, that's entirely up to you. But I just want to showcase how it could be actually a bad thing, as your character could get stuck, cause some havoc if hounds start to spawn in, or even other mobs in the game. And keep realizing that this could be something that eventually could change down the road if somehow these walls were to eventually fall down, if there was like a way to, like a pressure plate or something. But let's not get carried away here and just focus on the fact that it might not be the best option to have walls in your base, at least surrounding your base. Like I said, decorative pieces are good, and sometimes it depends on the actual players. Maybe they make some sort of contraption that works best for them. But I've always found that walls don't really work well for me, so for me, it's a no. For you, it might be a yes. Comment down below if you found a successful base setup on an as I'm kind of curious on how people actually set up walls in their base if they choose to do so. And you can use walls for good things and bad things, so don't always get discouraged by walls in general, as it's not always the worst things to have them. But for me, I just want to showcase a little bit of a video because I've had a lot of people ask me lately about walls and why I don't use them on my base, so I figured I'd showcase a video why I don't like it specifically. I hope this video helped you a little bit to know that walls are not always the best choice, and I will see you in the next one.